also do that with key-to-like systems. Most mass market fleet vehicles are all shipped with a single key. There's a master key, there's a key number you can easily find on the internet. You can order those from GM or Ford or whoever may be building the vehicle. And then more often than not, most of the time, those are not rekeyed when they get to the facility. So I've had friends who've demonstrated how they have done police departments and walked in and got in the cop cars and took photos with all their stuff. So if you ever want to steal a police cruiser, I highly recommend not doing that. Again, unless you have a contract, it's probably not going to end well for you. But it's the key-to-like systems is super interesting because it starts to open up your eyes to how easy it can be to get into some of these places, and it's primarily just through the obscurity of the information not being out there that makes them secure. People don't know that you can do this. They assume that every key is a special key, and that's just not true most of the time. Depending on your location, you might have badges, right? Badge readers. I didn't bring mine with me. I'm not wearing it right now. But almost all your major corporations these days have keys. They're little RFID keys, which is essentially a radio frequency. When it gets close enough to a reader, it activates and provides a value. There's a ton of tutorials online that you can find for building RFID cloners at varying levels. I've seen some really cool write-ups. I haven't built one myself, although I would like to just because it would be fun, where they've taken the card reader from an automotive garage because the garage readers need a longer range because you're sitting in your car, so you're not as close. And it gives you a longer range to read RFID tags, and you can build this into a backpack, go sit down on a bus next to somebody or find a bench or wherever people congregate, and just be near enough to them to be able to actually get a read off of someone's badge and clone it. And then you can print it out and badge your way in. Super handy and works pretty well most of the time. And I should say, this also comes down to your knowledge of the system, because there are RFID systems that are harder to crack. It may be difficult to clone that card. The cloning companies are they're in a race just like all the other software companies against the attackers to build the most secure system. They want to keep people out of the buildings as well. So some systems may be more secure than others. They may be harder to clone, have special security keys that are harder to replicate. So again, your reconnaissance and your information about the building that you're targeting is going to help you determine that. If they're using an older system, it may be super easy to do RFID cloning and plug that in. This one's my favorite one, and I don't know, I'm just curious by a show of hands how many people have heard about entering buildings with canned air before? Yeah, there's a few people. So canned air is kind of fun. We use it to dust off our computers and electronics. And also annoy our friends by tipping the can upside down and spraying it and getting that cold air that sprays out of there that they use for the propellant. It's a lot of fun. But there is an interesting security system in most big buildings, or depending on your office building, called a REX sensor. REX stands for Request for Exit. And this is essentially, you'll see them on a lot of doors. I don't know that we have them in this building. I haven't seen them here. They're probably somewhere. I don't see them in this room. But it's like that little white box that sits above the door. And when you walk up to it, you can hear it clicking, like when you're walking out of a building or something. That sensor is just looking for the presence or change typically in heat. But what it's not looking for is a change up or down specifically. Like it's not looking to sense your body heat to open up. What it is just any shift from ambient temperature will trigger that event. So that can of air that we were talking about, when you spray it out, it shifts the temperature down. It causes an IR trigger, and it makes it think that something has changed in the environment, and therefore it should authorize, which is unlock the door and allow it to be opened because someone's trying to leave the building. Depending on how it's set up, this may be keyed to do all sorts of number of things, like disable the alarm because someone's trying to leave when we don't want to trigger the alarm when it goes in. Depends on the layout and the setup. A really great option for this, I tried to get a good picture here. It's kind of small, but you'll see those very fancy buildings that have the sweet like double glass doors. Those are really hard to seal. So sliding the tube from your canned air up inside there and spraying it for an external door to click it open is super handy. And it could be it's a ton of fun. Another way you can do this that we did and it worked was a bucket of hot water. So we just had a small container that we filled with very warm water and poured it under the door because there was a slight gap under the door. And when the water went in, it changed the temperature enough to click it, and then we could open the door and get inside. Problem with that is it does leave a mess. So if you don't want to leave evidence, you don't want to necessarily leave behind a puddle of water. So that's just a number of different ways to get into a building after hours. You'll notice I didn't specifically talk about things like security cameras and alarm systems and things like that. That's another level of complexity that on many of our tests we just didn't bother with, because most of the time we were trying to get in and out quick.